Hello, everyone. Hello, Rowan, Rob,
G'day.
David. Hi, good evening. Uh, we don't have an audience tonight, so we'll skip all the normal formalities of introductions and the like. I will, however, acknowledge that the panel acknowledges that we are on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. Okay. Now, we have no apologies, and we still expect Robin to be joining us at some time, okay? Is there any declarations of conflict of interest? I've received none in writing, so I'm presuming none. Okay, nope. So we'll move on. Okay, our first item. Minutes. Minutes. Damn, there's always one thing I forget. Right. Can someone confirm and second the minutes of the 11th of May this year?
Happy to move, Chair.
Rob, thank you. Is there a seconder?
That'll be a June date, I reckon. I think that's a typo, isn't it? We had a meeting in June, didn't we?
Okay, yeah, well, of the last meeting, confirming the minutes of the last meeting, whenever that happened. Okay, Rob, you're still comfortable?
Yep.
Going with those? Is there a seconder?
Happy to second.
Okay, thanks, Rowan. Okay, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Show of hands, please. Yep, that's carried. Okay. Item 6.1, 13 Gloucester Street Prospect. It's a removal of a significant tree. That's a jacaranda. Scott, as the author of the report, it's clear that this tree is healthy, but it's just structurally unsound. And Sam is saying this tree won't last more than a year. Because not of its health, but because branches are likely to fall within that period. Is that, in summary, what he's saying?
Yes. So I think probably attachment 11, it's difficult to see without zooming in on the image, but Sam's concern is that one of the primary sort of leaders of the tree is going to fail within the next 12 months,
right?
Causing the tree to lose a significant amount of its canopy, and he's concerned about the safety risk,
right,
given the size of that leader.
Yep.
When it fails.
Yep.
And so he's expressing a useful life expectancy for the tree, notwithstanding its health.
Right, okay. Yeah, and it seems, it's probably a bit for another night, but it seemed to me strange that health and structure are viewed as two different things as opposed to the overall nature of the tree that we're facing. But, yeah.
The white cedar trees, and maybe this is a discussion for another night, but the white cedar trees are a really good example of that because they hollow out and lose their heartwood and are very susceptible to having the whole tree fail in storm events, even whilst there is green, healthy-looking canopy on the outside of the tree. So that the arborists are doing very much in terms of the structural assessment. What's the nature of branches? Are they overextended and end-weighted? What's the nature of the joins in the tree? And then what's the heartwood condition? In this case, it's that join with the central leader that's the concern.
Okay, yep. And to me, I must admit, the tree isn't as visually compelling as maybe the report infers, but that was, my own assessment. But yeah, any other questions of Scott? If not, anyone want to comment on it? Rob, do you want to go first in terms of your views?
Sure. Look, I'm very comfortable with the recommendation put forward. I mean, there's a obvious structural fault, and there doesn't appear to be any remedial options to overcome the need to remove the tree. And I don't feel that strongly also about the amenity of the tree as per your comments as well. So I'm more than happy to support its removal.
Hello, Robin. Thanks for joining us. Is Robin on?
I was just connecting. Should be good now.
Okay. Hello, Robin. Robin, are you there? Can you hear us? No. Okay, let's move on. Ruan, any comment?
No, happy to second that. So
Yep.
if it was moved.
Okay. David?
Yeah, I haven't got any further comment, presiding member.
Okay. Now, Robin?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
You can?
Hello, Robin. Hi,
Okay.
Robin. We're dealing with item 6.1, the removal of the significant tree.
Yep.
Everyone has to date spoken in favour of the recommendation. Could we have your views as well, please?
Sure, yeah. Look, I think it's obviously straightforward with the two arborists both agreeing that it's dangerous. It's probably quite rare that arborists vote to get rid of trees, but they have. So given that they've both voted that way, I support the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have consensus on this item, so we'll record that approval for removal of the tree has been granted. Thanks, everyone. Now, we have a couple of information reports now, so I'll pass on to Darren. Darren, you want to deal with 7.1 first?
Sure. Thank you, Don. So this is the first of probably the 3 or 4 reports that are going to come up to the panel in coming months that deal with the introduction of particularly the Planning and Design Code, and then more particularly the role of CAP changing once the code comes in. So I guess this is the starting point of just starting to brief you as a collective about the fact that obviously CAP's role will change. Some of the things that will change are obviously just documented in this report that I just want to kind of briefly touch on as key points out of what I put in front of you. I'm happy to open it up to any questions from the members. So I guess the key point that this report talks about is that obviously at the moment CAP derives its authority from council. And that will change when the PDI Act comes in. CAP becomes a relevant authority in its own right, and obviously all power goes to the CAP and or the assessment manager. So that's the first part that actually changes the function of the panel. There's also a new role for the panel, which will be to hear appeals against decisions of the assessment manager and or staff. So in the assessment manager role, there'll be some sub-delegation down to staff, obviously. Any decisions of staff will be as if they're decisions of the assessment manager. And an applicant will have a right to either, where they have appeal rights, obviously, go to the ERD court or come to CAP. So we will also be presenting something to the panel which says this is how we think appeals will work. There's been quite a bit of discussion in local government lately about what that really looks like. And I guess there's probably a desire not to make it look like an ERD court appeal, because if you want to do that, go to the court. So we'll probably come to the panel and say, look, it'll be very much a re-examination, I guess, of the information. And if the applicant's still not happy, they can go off to the ERD court, even if CAP agrees or doesn't agree with that decision. So that's a change of role for the panel.
Yep.
So certainly we'll have something coming up in coming months about how we suggest that process will run. Any questions about that before I jump into the next bits?
And in those situations, would the presiding member still have a casting vote and stuff like that?
I don't see any reason why not,
Okay.
without having going into it. I think what is likely to happen is we'll put it in front of the panel, because the difficulty is, if let's say it is my decision, do I write a report for the panel?
Yeah.
So there is an issue there about who that report's going to come from.
Yep.
It may well be just a presentation of information. And we go, look, here it is, members. This is a decision that the assessment manager made.
Yep.
What do you think? Do you agree, disagree, partly agree?
And what's the applicant's role in putting forward their case again?
Yeah, so
Okay.
so we need to work through all that stuff in the next couple of months.
Okay.
Um,
So is it likely that even if we don't have maybe some applications, we'll be meeting anyway to talk through all this sort of stuff?
Yeah, there may well be a process where there's not a lot of applications to be determined on an evening.
Yeah.
But certainly in coming months, we'll be working through the delegations for sure.
Yeah.
And some of these policy issues as well.
Right. Okay.
So I would envisage perhaps a couple of longer meetings leading into the kicking off to work through some of these issues, yes.
Right. Sorry, David, did I cut
No,
across what you want?
no, if that's okay. I was just going to ask about the role of the assessment manager. How does that person or that entity get selected under the PDI Act?
Yeah. So at the moment, I am the assessment manager of the panel, so I was appointed by council. So that process, or actually more particularly the council CEO, so that process has already occurred. This panel is already constituted under the PDI Act. So that appointment, as long as I have my accreditation, which I do, that appointment would continue on post the Planning and Design Code. If I didn't have accreditation, council would have to appoint someone else who was appropriately qualified. So in effect, council's role comes back to appointing the assessment manager, providing resources for the panel, and then obviously defending appeals effectively. So very much council's role becomes financial, supporting the panel and making sure that those key appointments are in place. And then obviously that goes forward. So obviously we need to make sure that we have a qualified person in the role and ideally a qualified backup if I get hit by a bus or a meteor or something of that ilk.
And does the panel have a role in keeping an overview of timeframes by staff and things, or not?
Well, there certainly may be an instance where staff need to get things done in a certain time frame that doesn't meet with meeting cycles.
Yeah.
So that's one of the issues that we'll be looking at in terms of delegations. If there's time critical things that would mean that we had to have extra meetings, for example, do we want to do that, or do we actually want to delegate from the panel back to myself to make that decision so we don't have to convene extra meetings?
Okay.
But we'll certainly be coming to you to say, look, we've got a short space of time to make this decision now.
And does the LGA or Normans have templates for panels to help work through these?
Yeah, so Normans have been engaged by the LGA to do a lot of this prep work. Yeah. So they had templates. They realised they weren't quite right, so a couple of councils got caught out by putting them to their panel.
Okay.
Then they've had to rescind them and redo them. So we're hoping that obviously all the country councils have to get that sorted out by the end of this month.
Yeah.
So we've actually got a better set of delegations than we had 6 weeks ago. So if they look pretty right, we'll probably come back to you either in August or certainly September.
Okay. Sorry, did I cut across again?
No, all good, all good. This is just supposed to be very much me providing some information and context, and then questions for the panel. And as I said, we'll be bringing extra stuff to the panel anyway. I put in here some stuff about the code of conduct that already binds the panel. I've just attached it for another instance. I've put a plug in here for level 2 accreditation. Yeah. So I think I sent an email a little while ago. I've got Rob's and I've got David's, sort of. So we're almost there. So obviously, Rowan and Don, if you could just put a plug in to get the level 2 accreditation started. And I'm going to chase up Julian as well, obviously, as our deputy. I have heard that they're dealing with applications reasonably quickly at the moment, so we'll see how that goes. What else do I have in here? As I said, that stuff will get presented. The building delegations.
Yeah, what's the notion behind the panel being responsible for building?
I'm not sure if I can tell you what the notion behind it is. It is. Scott, can you shed any extra light on that? I don't know really what the reasoning for it is.
Yeah.
The only description I've heard is that if the assessment panel is going to be constituted as the relevant authority for most purposes under the Act, make them the authority for all purposes under the Act. But that's not a particularly ideologically strong position, so I don't know what else is behind it.
Yeah. And it is an odd one because obviously, buildings qualifications or skills is not particularly one of the criteria for CAP members. So anyway, but there is an easy workaround that actually delegates that authority back to council. So that's in all likelihood what we'll be doing.
And you didn't know in talking earlier about the relationship between the panel and the Building Fire Safety Committee with councils.
Well, the Building Fire Safety Committee exists. It has its own function.
But who appoints it? Will it be the panel?
No, council.
Council does that.
Council does it now. I'm assuming that they will in the future. So that's, yeah.
That's the only thing that council is still involved in the space on. It's because that has a relationship to some other powers, housing improvement, so forth. So that is council in that instance.
Yep.
Pretty well everything else is.
Right. Okay.
Planning and design code, look, we just in terms of that, obviously phase 3 went on consultation. This council put in quite a lot of commentary around the need for design policy and some provisions around the residential zone. We're hearing some of that's going to get picked up, not sure in what form. So staff are working through with DIPTI around what that zoning looks like. Obviously, or around the start of the code, we'll probably put an actual report to you that says, these are the new zones, this is the policy that it starts to talk about, just a very basic introduction.
Yep.
Before you start to see applications.
Okay.
So that will probably be sort of just before commencement as well.
Okay.
Terms of reference. So this CAP has a terms of reference / meeting procedure that we only amended a few months ago.
Yep.
As you mentioned, Don, there are some standard terms of reference that the LGA has. I think our existing one's probably better. So we'll work through a process of making sure that they are improved, and we'll put it back to the panel and say we can split them apart, we can keep it together.
Yep.
Here's a couple of options. So that'll be, again, sometime in the next couple of months.
And what's the hint behind CAP meetings will likely be conducted with an increased focus on viewing on plans and reports on electronic devices? We're pretty much there. Are you suggesting we won't be getting hard copies of plans?
Well, we may or may not. I think certainly we're going to electronic assessment. So the planners won't be dealing with hard copy plans at all. Right. So it'll obviously all be through the portal. The hint is possibly, we have to put an agenda together. Will it be easier to access the portal in a meeting? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's probably just exactly as you said,
Yep.
Don, a hint around if you've got a good device, it'll probably make it faster in the meetings, but I'm not telling everyone to go out and get a brand new computer or laptop or anything.
Yep.
But it certainly will be, I think, a focus as much as possible on electronic assessment and viewing of plans.
Okay. Yep.
And now there is also some training opportunities that are around at the moment. So what I'll do after this meeting is just send all the members an email around some of the training that's going on with DIPTI. The staff are doing quite a lot of it at the moment. Not all of it will be relevant to CAP members. So we might cherry pick out some of the more relevant training. They're basically online seminars.
Oh, okay.
So it's very easy to participate, generally an hour. So we'll just basically push it through for interest sakes more than anything. And if you want to start to get some appreciation about what's going on, feel free to jump on. So I'll do that email in the next couple of days. And really, I'll open it up. Any more questions?
Yeah. I only had one more. What's the role of private planning certifiers going to be?
Okay. So in the system, obviously, we will have deemed to satisfy provisions.
Yep.
That will allow some planning certification. So expanding the role that we currently have.
Yep.
Some of the caveats on that will be it's unlikely to apply, not a lot of it will apply in character areas or heritage overlays.
Right.
We will have a character and or heritage overlay over almost all of our residential zones.
Right.
So in terms of the prospect example, probably very minor domestic structures may be able to be certified. So your carports, sheds in your small sheds in your backyard, that sort of thing. So some small elements, but it's unlikely that they will be certifying new dwellings, new two-story infills, that sort of thing. So there'll be some role in prospect, but not as much as we.
But as a general rule, an applicant might go to a private planning certifier as well as a private building certifier, not come to council at all.
That's right. So there'll be other scenarios where exactly that. Council has no assessment role and basically collects the two consents at the end and issues as development approval, keeps a hold of the plans, and the main role there will then be compliance and building inspections. Okay. So there'll be very much the scenario where, council's not involved, particularly in greenfields. So there'll be certainly some estates out on the fringe where council may lose a lot of its planning work
Yeah.
to certifiers.
Right. And their fee.
Yep.
Okay.
So there'll
Yep.
still be some fees around for council's role,
Yeah.
but they will lose some fees as well.
Okay. Interesting. Sorry, any other questions of Darren?
Darren, just two real quick ones. So just having a look through your report, with the delegations, am I correct in suggesting that if it's performance assessed but exempt from public notification, then the assessment manager is delegated to the assessment manager to assess rather than the panel? Or is there still, like, so for example, I'm thinking a lot of that urban corridor stuff, that's Cat 1, like the 5-storey buildings and along Prospect Road, Churchill Road and so forth. Are they things that will be done through the assessment manager, or are they things that will still come to the panel?
Yeah, look, I think, I can't remember what I put in there. I think it's probably, I put likely to be. So and Scott probably across it more than me sometimes, so if I'm wrong, Scott, jump in. So if it's deemed to satisfy, then that will sit with the assessment manager. If it's deemed to satisfy with minor variations, that will sit with an assessment manager. If it's performance assessed and undergoes public consultation, that will sit with a panel. If it's performance assessed and that doesn't undergo consultation, it may be done by the assessment manager. And it's likely that I'll still have a clause that says I can push up anything that I want to push up to the panel. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, they're decisions we're making, so we can alter it. But in premise, the draft does that. And I think if we think about all the residential zones having a character overlay and a significant amount of single-storey additions, alterations, replacement homes, all being performance assessed without notification, bringing 350 reports to the panel for those items may not be the best use of your time.
Sure.
But getting that mechanism to allow the assessment manager to say, this project's big enough that it should still go to the panel, I think that's where the delegations will work.
Yeah, and so I think in that context, I don't see a big change against what we do now. So we don't have to send 2-storey dwellings to the panel. We do. We don't have to send trees to the panel. We do. So, there'll be, I think you'll be seeing similar applications to what you do now. So I don't think, from my perspective, as staff, we're going to try and grab it all and not put it up. The reason why we have a panel is to put those applications up and get your input. So I think you'll get very similar applications to what you get now, Rob. And
cool.
we'll actually work through the delegation drafts to kind of get to that position, I would think. So
the one thing to throw on the back of that as well, Rob, is I think Normans have been, certainly I've been thinking about, if the panel is the decision maker, the appeal right for an applicant is only to the Environment Resources and Development Court. Whereas if something that is appropriate to be delegated to the assessment manager, that decision happens, there's now that opportunity for the panel to review that decision. So it gives an improved right of access to review for applicants.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, I guess, and that provides that, as you said, it's another tier of, appeal before it has to go to the Erd Court. I guess then on top of that, the other element is just politically council's views on whether they want to remain at arm's length to certain applications and have it go straight to the panel for political reasons. I think I wasn't quite sure in my own mind how that all worked in terms of whether the ability for the assessment manager and the CAP to influence the delegations. But from what you're saying, it sounds as though there is that flexibility around, what comes to us versus what is done by administration.
Well, I guess ultimately, Rob, you will be deciding. You will be putting a recommendation up with some delegations, and the panel will decide. If you want to see 350 applications a year,
no, that wasn't my.
I didn't think it was. So, effectively, that's the big change. It sits with you rather than sitting with council. So,
that makes sense.
as I said, we'll likely frame the delegations in a similar way to what we have now. Obviously, different legislation, but you know the intent is to kind of have a similar role as what you've got now. And we'll have to try and explain all that to you in that report that talks about the delegations and where things sit.
And are we still responsible for a yearly report to council?
There is certainly reporting. I can't remember if it goes to council or not.
Yeah.
Scott, do you remember anything about that? Well, it could go back to the minister,
Yeah.
for example.
Don't recall there being any reporting obligation to council.
I guess the issue is it's a lot easier to get that data. You know, if you're an interested party, you log into the portal, see how many applications have been lodged in this council, what the percentage. I'm sure you can run all those reports.
Right.
So some of that information, it just becomes a lot easier to access than it would have been previously.
Okay.
As another example, this council won't have to maintain a separate application register moving forward because it's centrally on the portal. So some of those old reporting obligations will drop off.
Yep. Did you have two questions?
Yeah, just one other. Are you expecting on the back of the, a completely different structure to policy in the code, a change to your report formats? Or are you thinking you will change the way you structure your reports or?
Look, I think there'll be some change, yes. In an easy answer, yes. We are going to go through another round of standardisation of council reporting anyway, in terms of council reports, committee reports, and CAP is one of those. So, but I've kind of maintained in that process enough flexibility to tailor CAP reports as we need to. So, yeah, I think they'll change because, the system is changing. So at some point, I think we'll come and say, this is what we're going to use. But I think we'll actually have a fairly short review period that says how they're working. So again, they should be similar to what you see now, but until we sit down and start writing them, I think we'll actually try and figure out what we're going to look at.
The one thing I will flag early, Rob, because I was just discussing this with Gentleman and Dipsy last week. At present, the online code doesn't have a true version control method. You can search for an address, search for a development type, but you can't search for which version of the code you're accessing. And it's likely if we're presenting something to the panel that it is some weeks after it was initially lodged. And given the likelihood of refresh time on the code, it is likely a different version of the code. So I think we're anticipating that we're going to need to generate an output from the website at the time of lodgement as to which policies and how they apply, and presumably attach that to a report, which is something that's quite different from our current approach where we try and take the salient sort of cohesive points of relevant policies. But I think our concern is that otherwise members may be logging online and seeing a different version of the code than the one you actually need to use to assess a development. So it's just a case of how they're telling us they're intending to develop that technology. Will it be there in October? I have my doubts. And there'll be some need to adjust along those lines for you.
I guess that's a tip back to my point about electronic plans. So we might get to, but we still do the electronic plans, but there'll be a lot of data that maybe we wouldn't have in our reports now that possibly will be in the near future. So our agendas might go up in size substantially because of the different process.
I think Rob was going to say something again. Rob?
Oh, just a real quick one, follow up there on Scott. So what, in terms of you're saying, if at the time of lodgement, what comes out at the time of lodgement might change later on. What do you mean by that? Sorry.
So I think that the difference between development plans where one council might make an amendment to its plan once a year or once every 2 years, I think it's far more likely that the code will be continuously updated, which raises a version control issue that we don't currently have. And it may not even be issues of policy substance. It may be that one or more provisions is turned on in a performance assessment table where it wasn't previously. And so there's no change in a word anywhere in the document except that you now need to look at this provision or not look at that one.
Understood,
And I haven't gotten very strong responses around the issues associated with that to date, which is why I'm sort of thinking in my mind that there is a mechanism for us to produce a point in time PDF document. These are the provisions. And I think that's likely to be the starting point for us.
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense. Thank you.
Okay. Nothing else? Okay. Well, we just note the report, I think,
Note
at
the
this
report.
stage, and we'll wait for
Further
some
to come.
others. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Darren, any real comment to make on 7.2 and 8.1?
No.
Nothing from other members about those two one pages about the Planning Commission and appeals?
Nope.
No.
Okay. No other general business people want to raise? Nope. Okay. So now next meeting's on the 10th of August, and it sounds as if we're going to have a meeting.
Yeah, we'll certainly have a meeting. We're just working through whether that'll be online or not. So we've got, I think, with the declarations, we're going to have 2 more online meetings for the next 2 months. It's quite possible that we're going to have an application, a Cat 3 application, come back next month with quite a number of representatives. So we're probably maybe leaning more towards a physical meeting, but we will confirm.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. I'll declare the meeting closed at 6:02. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good night.
See ya.